Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I'm back from vacation. That's the first thing I want to say. Thank you for your patience and for enjoying the videos I had scheduled while I was gone. I'll have more about my vacation later in the week, probably when I do my Friday Reads video. Today, I'm actually here to react to the announcement of the winner of the 2022 Booker Prize. And I'm really excited about this. You probably have already seen, but the winner was The Seven Moons of Maali, Almeida by Shehan Karunatilaka. This is not a book that I have read, but I'm really excited to read it. I actually have a copy pre-ordered. It will not be released in the United States until November 1st. It will be in paperback. That's the good news. When it is released here, I have a copy pre-ordered from Montana Book Company, and I'm looking forward to getting it when it is released. This is a book that I had not heard anything about when the long list was announced for the Booker Prize. I'll have my reaction videos for both the long list, the short list, and last year's winner in the description box down below if you would like to check it out. This was a title that was entirely new to me. It immediately sounded intriguing, and I'm really glad that it made the short list. By the time the short list was announced, I feel like there had been a sort of sea change in reaction. I think a lot of people hadn't heard of the book when it made the long list, and as a result, it was kind of low on everybody's radar, even if it sounded interesting. And then a lot of people started reading through the long list. And by the time it got to the shortlist announcement, there were a lot of people who were excited about it. I feel like when the long list was announced, people were mostly excited by small things like these, by Keegan making the list, and The Trees by Percival Everett. And by the time the shortlist was announced, which featured both Keegan and Percival Everett, it really feels like people had gotten very excited about The Seven Moons of Maali, Almeida. And obviously that bears out with the announcement that it is the book that has won the 2022 Booker Prize. I'm very much looking forward to reading it. I obviously can't say anything about the quality of the book and whether or not it deserved to win, but it is definitely a book that I want to read. Therefore, I'm really excited about this win. I will briefly talk about the books that were on the shortlist that did not win, and then we'll circle back around to The Seven Moons of Maali, Almeida. And I will say, before we segue into the other books from the shortlist, that the winner announcement was a little bizarre. It was delayed. I had the YouTube, first they said it was going to be on BBC, and then it wasn't. Obviously, that's something that is out of the Booker Prize's control, but Queen Consort Camilla was going to be announcing the winner, and maybe there are circumstances out of their control, but it was announced very late, and as a result, it felt very rushed. Like, this is the first time I have ever seen a Booker Prize announcement where they have put a time constraint on the winner. Usually they let them give a speech. It almost felt like the Academy Awards when you try to play somebody off the stage. The host interrupted at a certain point, saying that she wanted to ask a question, and he wasn't. Shehan Karunatilaka was not done with his speech. That felt a little weird. I know it is late in the UK at the time that they have made the announcement, which was not that long ago, maybe 10, 15 minutes ago as I am filming this. But it did feel a little bizarre. It was kind of like, just, let them talk. But there's a time constraint. They probably have media interviews and things to do. So it just felt oddly rushed once it actually happened. And that probably is because of the delays in the actual announcement. And I'm not in the room, so I don't know what those were. His speech was really great and very funny and uplifting. He talked about his hopes for Sri Lanka, where the book is set. Journalism, he had little very nice nods, not just in a showy, performative way, about the other people who were on the long list. Like, he very specifically mentioned Percival Everett in one point, saying that he had originally wanted to do a sort of Percival Everett-like reading of the names of journalists who had been killed, and he was not going to do that. So it was a very nice way of honoring other people on the short list. I do think that it's very likely that when you go through an experience like that, you do either become very close with the other authors who are on the shortlist with you, or you just hate them. And it's good to know in this case that at least for Shehan Karunatilaka, he got very close with the other authors who were on the shortlist. That is good to know. And I enjoyed his speech. He seemed very happy and surprised by the win, and just gave a nice speech, even though it was kind of oddly cut short. Let's talk a little bit about the other titles from the shortlist. The first one is Glory by NoViolet Bulawayo. I could see in the chat while we were waiting for the live stream to begin that a lot of people seemed to be pulling for Glory. I know a lot of people have been a fan. I'm not that interested in reading that book, which is a disappointment because I'm a big fan of NoViolet Bulawayo's previous book, which is We Need New Names. I just feel like it feels like Animal Farm, basically. And I know people say that it's different. I haven't read it, so I really can't say, but I just don't feel interested in reading it, if that makes any sense. But there were a lot of people who were fans. I would not have been at all surprised if Glory had won. It didn't, but, you know, and it's not a book that I feel particularly interested in reading, but I definitely see why it has appeal for a lot of people and why it would have had a chance at the win. Just not a book that I'm particularly interested in picking up. Then there's The Trees by Percival Everett, which I actually have a copy of, but I didn't grab it before starting to film. I really want to read that book, and I'm hoping I will read it by the end of the year. So now Seven Moons and The Trees are books that I would love to read before the end of this year. Really looking forward to them, and hopefully I'll be able to cram them in because we're running out of time for the year, believe it or not. It's coming faster than you would think. I thought The Trees was a good contender for the Pulitzer Prize for fiction earlier this year. It obviously did not win and was not a finalist for that prize, but I am really glad to see Percival Everett's stature as a writer growing because he seems like a very interesting author. He has very interesting concepts. He is releasing a book later this year, which is a sort of unexpected turn. It's something like a spy parody that also talks about race in the way of his other books tend to do. I don't know that it will be a contender for other big awards in the way his last two books have been. His previous book, Telephone, was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. But I'm really glad to see that his stature is growing and that other writers are really discovering him. It makes me very excited to see what he does next. And I hope I do manage to read The Trees before the end of the year. Then there's Treacle Walker by Alan Garner. Alan Garner was actually not at the ceremony. Today is his birthday. He was the oldest person to be shortlisted for the Booker Prize, I believe, and today is his birthday. So that could have come into play, but it did not. I can't help but feel that Treacle Walker is something of a Lifetime Achievement nominee because when people talk about Alan Garner, they mostly talk about how great his other books are and how great his career are. They don't feel very effusive about Treacle Walker. And again, I haven't read the book, so I can't personally say anything about it. It just seems like people aren't actually very excited about Treacle Walker, even if they're fans of Alan Garner. And before anybody says anything, because people tend to get very upset when I do a reaction video and have not read all of the books and things like that, it's fine. I'm not pretending to have read all of the books. I'm purely going off of, in the case of Seven Moons, I'm excited that it won because it is a book that I am genuinely excited to read once it is released in the United States. I know I could order a copy from the UK, but I figure I will wait for it to be released here, especially since it will be in paperback when it is released here. So I'm not pretending to have read any of these books. I don't pretend to have opinions. I'm just kind of reacting to what other people are saying because I feel like you can go off of general consensus and make predictions and things like that. So just based on pure interest, I don't feel drawn to Treacle Walker at all. It is what it is. And again, for the way people talk about it, it doesn't seem like a lot of people, who are even fans of Alan Garner, are particularly excited about Treacle Walker. So I am left feeling that I would more likely check out one of Alan Garner's older books and skip Treacle Walker, at least for now. The next one is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I read that back in January. I loved it. It is the shortest book ever to be shortlisted for the Booker Prize. And I'm a big fan. I really enjoy this book. I think it has a great tone. I think it is a perfect case for why short fiction or shorter fiction and novellas are so good. And just because they're short doesn't mean they don't pack a really powerful emotional punch. I think it is a perfect example of that because in 116 pages, I believe, Claire Keegan tells a really great story about community and about independence and what it is to stand up against a very powerful system, and how not only how difficult that can be, but how easy it is to just be quiet and allow terrible things to continue, not only because it's what your community says should happen, but because the organization in question, the Catholic Church, is in power. So it's just a great book. It deals with the I'm forgetting the exact name of it, but the sort of laundry scandal that was happening in Ireland, where it turned out that convents were separating mothers from their babies, especially if the mother was unwed. And it was a terrible thing that happened, and it's a great little novella. I love it. I'm so glad that it made the shortlist. I would have been very happy if it had won, but I haven't read the whole long list, so I can't really adequately measure them all against each other. And I definitely see why The Seven Moons of Maali Almeida ultimately won, even though I haven't read it, because it seems like a very good book, and the subject matter is really important. I'm just really glad that small things like these got the recognition to make the shortlist. I think it always was going to have a very steep uphill battle to win because it is such a short book. And yet again, I really think it makes a great case for why novellas can be so powerful, and that you don't need a really large, expansive page count to be a good book and to really leave people with a powerful emotional response. And I have a pre-order of Claire Keegan's book Foster, which is going to be released in the United States later this year. It's already out in the UK. And again, I know I could order it from there, but I'm going to support my local indie and pre-order it. So that's what I have done. And then the final one is O. William by Elizabeth Strout. I was surprised that this made the shortlist simply because it would be an odd choice, since it is a sequel to a couple of other books. And not that the books don't stand alone on their own, but it does feel like it would be a bit of an odd approach. Elizabeth Strout is an author I really want to revisit. I've only read 2 of her books. Olive Kitteridge, which won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, and I need to reread that because I didn't quite like it when I read it after it won the Pulitzer Prize. But I think I might appreciate it more if I read it now. And the other one is The Burgess Boys, which I did not like and don't have any plans to revisit. But I hear so many good things about Elizabeth Strout. She, to me, it's funny because she won a Pulitzer Prize already. But it almost feels Marilyn Robinson-esque, where it's like they win a Pulitzer Prize, and then a couple of years later, there's suddenly a groundswell of support for the author in the career. Like, people suddenly start appreciating all of the precise work that the author does. It feels like that has happened with Marilyn Robinson. It feels like that it is happening with Elizabeth Strout. So I am very much looking forward to catching up on her books. I will be reading the other books that came before O. William. I think there are 3 that came before O. William, maybe 2. I don't remember. But I'm going to be catching up on Elizabeth Strout probably next year. That will be one thing that I try to accomplish in 2023. And eventually I will be getting to O. William. It felt surprising that it made the shortlist, again, just given the fact that it is kind of connected to other books that have already been published. But I'm not all that surprised given, again, the groundswell of support that people are developing for Elizabeth Strout. And that is a nice thing to see. It's nice to see an author getting appreciation that they deserve. And I definitely think that that is the case for her. Circling back to The Seven Moons of Maali Almeida. So if you are unfamiliar, I'm going to read the quick description of it that's on bookshop.org because I pulled this up really quickly. It was easier than just trying to navigate the Booker website, which I will link down below. Here is the description of the book. Colombo, 1990. Maali Almeida, war photographer, gambler, closet queen, has woken up dead in what seems like a celestial visa office. His dismembered body is sinking in the serene Barra Lake, and he has no idea who killed him. In a country where scores are settled by death squads, suicide bombers, and hired goons, the list of suspects is depressingly long, as the ghouls and ghosts with grudges who cluster round can attest. But even in the afterlife, time is running out for Maali. He has 7 moons to contact the man and woman he loves most and lead them to the photos that will rock Sri Lanka. 10 years after his prize-winning novel Chinaman established him as one of Sri Lanka's foremost authors, Shehan Karunatilaka is back with a thrilling satire, says The Economist, and rip-roaring state-of-the-nation epic that offers equal parts mordant wit and disturbing profound truths. And this is why you can see it has an LGBTQ element, it has a global element, it has an element about the importance of journalism in a time when it feels like we live in very turbulent times, not just in one specific area, but all over the world. There's so much that feels turbulent and like roiling and distressful. It's not all that surprising that this book has really caught on with a lot of people. And you can definitely see it having an impact emotionally for a lot of those things. And I'm just really looking forward to reading it. I can't wait. Except I can, because I'm waiting for November 1st when it will be released in the United States. That's coming up. It's not that far away. It's not that far away. And I'm really hoping that I will manage to read it before the end of 2022. But we'll see, because again, that's going to be here before you know it. And I'm really happy that this book ended up winning. And again, I haven't read it, so it's kind of weird to be so happy for a book that I haven't read. But based on the emotional response that people were having to it when the shortlist was announced, and again, how fascinating it is to see such a sea change where it was unknown when the long list was announced. And then by the time the shortlist was announced, it had gathered a fan base who just loved it and were really excited to see it in the mix and who are probably celebrating right now. That is wonderful and good to see, because last year it was a little bit predictable, being honest. Once the long list was announced, it kind of felt like the narrative was building that Damon Galgut was going to be getting the prize after some earlier tries, and the promise definitely, I haven't managed to read it yet, but I really want to still. But the narrative definitely felt like this was the time for Damon Galgut, and then he made the shortlist, and then he won. So it almost felt anticlimactic, where this year's prize really feels like there was a sense of discovery for people who were following along with the prize. And that's just always exciting to see. And one thing I really do also very much appreciate about the Booker is they have a good eye for diversity, which is particularly good after the Nobel announcement last week, I think. I'm going to do a reaction video to that. I'm happy for Annie Erna. She seems like an author who definitely deserves it, but they are an organization that has not lived up to their promise to be more diverse. And all they need to do is look at the Booker Prize. It's possible. They're still rewarding quality books that people like and want to engage with and are happy to see succeed. But they're doing it with diverse authors. Damon Galgut last year, and now Shehan Karunatilaka. It's possible. It's very possible. And again, that's not anything to say about Annie Erna. Everything I've heard about her has been very positive. She is an author I actually want to read as well. But yeah, it's nice to see a book award that is able to think globally and act globally. That's all I will say for now. Hopefully I will have more on that later, the Nobel, later this week, since I was traveling when the Nobel Prize for Literature was announced. I would love to hear what you think of the Booker Prize. Are you disappointed? Are you still pining for something that was on the long list? I know Matthew Sharapa is probably freaking out because he was a big fan of After Sappho, which was on the long list and did not make the short list. But I know of the short list that Seven Moons of Maali Almeida was the book that he said should win. So wherever he is right now, I'm sure he's freaking out. I texted him so excited when the announcement was made. And I know there are a lot of people who, like him, are very pleased with this outcome, even if maybe there's a book from the long list that they would have liked to see make it to the short list and win instead. Let me know if there's a book that you are still thinking was overlooked, if there's something from the long list or another book on the short list that you would have liked to see win instead. Let me know if you're excited about this. All your thoughts about Booker 2022. And if you have thoughts about Booker 2023 already, it's really early, but let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to hear them. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.